Hey everyone, Steve Schlanger, Christian Vande. This is In the Saddle, where we kick around some of the big topics in the world of cycling. A lot of the things you're talking about in social media, online, the topics that you're having every day. That's what we cover here. And what we're covering today, Christian Vande, is the Grand Tours. A lot of you have been saying that the Grand Tours are too long. Think about it. Each is 3 weeks. That's 9 weeks of Grand Tour racing every year. People think that it's too much. They have to be shortened in some way. My question to you is, should we shorten the Grand Tours?
What are you going to do in July? We can't shorten the Grand Tours. No way. I don't think so. And I think the question that's been posed many times, especially within cycling, it's not necessarily the Grand Tours. It's the Giro and the Vuelta. The Giro d'Italia, which is the Tour of Italy for everyone else, and the Vuelta España, the Tour of Spain. These are the races, the lesser ones of the Tour de France, of the 3 Grand Tours. And I think those are the ones that are always up for the chopping block.
So are you saying that you would shorten those?
I would think about it. And I think a lot of times this is a conversation of the actual World Tour calendar, which is a mess, and not necessarily their fault. I think there's way too many races going on throughout the year, and I don't think it's their fault necessarily. But yeah, I mean, as a businessman, yes, I think that they should be shortened. But as a rider who is really good at Grand Tours, and really that was my really meat and potatoes of my racing career, then no.
Well, as you, a former rider,
Yep.
now as a broadcaster, as a fan of the sport, what would you do? You can only make one decision. You either keep them the way they are or you shorten them. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see both sides, and I could see the races like the Giro being shortened a bit in the Vuelta. I mean,
I know you can see both sides, but you got to be on one side or the other, not in the middle of the fence.
I know. So I mean, are you saying all the Grand Tours or just?
I'm saying lay it out the way you want. I mean, you can shorten one, you can shorten all, you can shorten 2, whatever you want to do. How would you do it?
So the UCI stipulates that you can actually shorten it and still be a Grand Tour as of right now. So
yes. The UCI president himself has said he's open to the idea of shortening the Grand Tours.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Tour needs to stay no matter what. But I'm open for the other ones to be shortened. I don't think it should be straight across the board. I think it should be open. So let's say the Giro could be 16 days and the Vuelta could be something like that as well. And I think that opens it up for a little bit for other races to globalize the sport a little bit better. But I think the Tour de France need to stay at 21 days.
I know you're open to it, but you know what I'm going to ask? Do I even have to ask it? Would you do it? If the power was all yours, okay, if with the movement of this pen you could sign a document and make it happen, what would you do?
Yeah, I would bring it down. And I would bring it down to 3 weeks with 2 rest days. So that would bring it down to you'd start on a Monday and then on a Sunday, for example, or even less, a Wednesday, and have no rest days. So right now it's 23 days long with the 2 rest days. Sometimes even longer with travel days. I mean, we even started the Giro on a Friday, bringing it to 24 days, which is ridiculous. And I think that closes the sport down too much where you can't globalize it and there's not enough room in the calendar where you already have to have races like in Australia in January. So I think if you did that, that would open the door for a little bit more. So yes, I would bring it down at least 4 days on both shoulders of the Tour de France.
I have no doubt about this, and I've felt this way for a long time. I would absolutely keep the Tour de France at 3 weeks. It is the granddaddy in the sport. It's always been that way. You keep that as the signature event, but you have got to. I mean, you have to shorten the Giro and the Vuelta. And as I pointed out, the UCI president has talked about the fact that he's open to this idea, and a lot of other race organizers around the world, as you mentioned, want to get their races into the calendar in some fashion. But the biggest thing to me is this, the fact that for races in the sport of cycling, okay, you need your biggest stars to be at your biggest races.
Agreed.
It's that way in golf, it's that way in tennis. Tiger Woods in golf, Roger Federer in tennis. You need your biggest stars to be there.
Yeah.
And if they're going to race the Tour de France, which most always are, they can't be at the Vuelta all the time. They can't be at the Giro. So if you shorten those 2 races, it allows them to still be there and not just show up, but show up to try and win.
Agreed. And not to mention that we also have big races going on during the Vuelta and on during the Giro. So it's a complete mess. And like I said, I think this is more of a calendar problem than necessarily just the Giro or the Vuelta problem. But yeah, no, I agree with you. But my only hesitation with this is that we're just giving more power to the Tour de France. And so we're raising that up, which is already too high to begin with, where we need to raise up the other races. So I think that all the other races need to be brought up. And they started in 2005 with the World Tour, with the Pro Tour, however you want to call it now. And I thought it was a great idea at first. But then slowly but slowly that kind of broke down again. And these races don't wield the same power as what they once did.
Well, let me say this, though. Talk about raising up those other races. Don't you raise those up by having those stars who otherwise wouldn't be there,
Yeah.
all of a sudden they can race them.
Agreed. I mean, this is one of those things that it has been so convoluted over the years.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes the race organizers almost have a little bit too much power over what's going on and not necessarily the teams of who are putting all the money into it a lot of times. It's hard to say, but the biggest thing is that everyone's going to be at the Tour. And that's the only non-variable, I guess, we have throughout the year, that if you can, you're going to be at the Tour de France. Everyone's vying for position, whether you're a team or a rider, to get into the Tour de France. Everything else is kind of depending on where you're from, where your sponsor's from, all those kind of things come into play. I would love to see everything come up a little bit, but I'm just scared a little bit that if we do raise the Tour de France, and that is still the only 21-day stage race, that maybe they even get more power.
Well, a lot of people are saying online that the Tour de France is one of the races that they want to see shortened, that they want to make it more of a level playing field with the Vuelta, with the Giro, that, as you said, you don't want to give all the power to that one race. So reducing the number of days in the Tour de France, that would be a big deal. If you had to, would you do it?
Hey, man, I haven't been home in July since the 90s. So, I mean, I would love to be home a little bit more. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just part of the fabric of cycling, you know, and that's what I do. And I don't think if you had a poll of the true fans, of the really hardcore fans, I think they would like to keep it at 21 days.
Well, it all sounds good in theory, okay? And it sounds like it's the right move to make. Here's the pushback, though, all right? The pushback is going to come in
You mean
economics.
the Heisman now? Or what?
That's a good Heisman pose, though, if I had to do it. It's going to come in the business model and the economics of the sport, because if you lose days, whether it's the Tour, the Vuelta, or the Giro, you're giving away dollars, all right? Sponsorship money, TV money, and no sport in any business is going to give money away that freely. So you got to fight on your hands on that.
No, I agree. But at the same time, you could also argue that if you raise the level of awareness in your race, so you brought it down 4 days, and you raise that, then maybe you have even more awareness of the 18 days or the 17 days that you did have racing. So I don't know. Because I see a lot of different things going on, but I do think that there does need to be a change at some point in time. And why are we waiting? You know, is something miraculous going to happen? All I know is that the calendar continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And just like we see in many different sports, NASCAR not being immune to that is the same thing, where just a little bit too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing.
The top line to it for me is this. In other individual sports like tennis and golf, you have 4 majors, 4 slams every year, okay? All of your stars go to all 4, and they're there to win all. Not to train, not to practice, they're there to win all. The golfers are trying to win at the Masters as much as they are trying to win the U.S. Open. In tennis, the Australian Open, the French, they're trying to win that equally, okay? But we don't have that in cycling, all right? We need Chris Froome, Geraint Thomas, Nairo Quintana at the Giro to win, at the Tour to win, at the Vuelta to win. To me, that's the biggest issue here.
Now that's a great point. All right, you definitely brought up the bar there. I mean, that I like a lot, and I love it. If you put it that way, and you bring it down to like even 10 days, so that, because cycling is such a brutal sport, there's no way you could possibly ever keep yourself at that kind of level. Just like we were talking about before, how long can you keep form? There's no way you can possibly do 3 Grand Tours as it is right now. So yeah, if you could sign a proposition that all the teams will bring their best riders, if we do bring it down to 12 days, let's say 14 days. Then yes, I am 1,000% for it. But I don't believe them as far as I could throw them until I actually see, pen to paper.
All right, kumbaya moment here. Me and Quistren agree on shortening the Grand Tours. Give this guy a little more time by the pool instead of spending some 9 weeks covering Grand Tour racing. Let's shorten them.